All right, we have successfully traveled in the 10K time machine and are here to talk Minnesota Aurora's 2023 season opener, a 5-0 win over Rochester FC with Sota Soccer Aurora beat reporter Matthew Johnson. You can follow him on Twitter at MJ Matsui. MJ, how are you, man?
I'm great. I'm tired.
Yeah, I bet.
Yesterday was a busy day. As you know, I like to put a lot into home matches that I cover, and
Yep, 100%.
but I had fun, and the game was fun to run. And what a result! 5-0.
Yeah, what a result indeed. Pretty dominant performance for Aurora in their opener. We'll get to the game itself in a minute, but just take me inside the stadium Wednesday night. What was the atmosphere like, and was there anything sort of noticeably different from the 2022 opener to 2023?
Some of the biggest things that I noticed were some of the change in some of the vendors.
Yep.
Last year, I believe they partnered with Urban Growler. This year it's Prize. So
Okay.
Prize Brewing, and the Prize Brewing tent, the line was really long.
Mhm.
The other really exciting thing for non-drinkers or people with sweet tooth is the Ghirardelli chocolate line. They had free s'mores and some open fires on the concourse, and
Yeah.
people were loving that as well.
I'm not gonna lie. When I saw the partnership announcements in the preseason, the Girardelli one was the first one that I saw. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome! I have to come out to a game and get me some of
And
those because that's fantastic."
in talking with Andrea Yock, the fun thing was they reached out to the club.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Ghirardelli's is just like, hey, can we get in on this?
Yeah.
And then somehow they came up with the free s'mores bit. And I think that's going to be a winner. Might not be as popular on the really hot days, but
Yeah.
on the game started at 77 degrees, but it cooled down to 60 something, low 60s, and those warm s'mores sounded like a really good idea.
Yeah, 'tis the season. Early morning, late nights, it gets kind of cool, but just couldn't ask for a more beautiful night at TCO Stadium for the opener on Wednesday.
The
5
other thing
goals.
that
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The other thing that I noticed from the logistics standpoint is that Minnesota Aurora have hired more staff.
Mhm.
And while covering home games versus away games, it was very evident just how much more organized Minnesota Aurora is. They're even more organized this year.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome, and that just that helps the experience for everybody going to those games at TCO. And with 5,100 fans in attendance, it seems like that interest in going to games and the fan support is still carrying on through year two. And so obviously they need every bit of that help and organization on match days. But let's go on the field now, MJ. 5 goals for the attack, a clean sheet for the defense. We'll kind of go section by section of the pitch here. And let's start with the attack. A
Yes.
first half brace from Kat Rapp, actually 2 goals in the first 35 minutes. Additional goals from Jenna Zibelich, Maya Hansen, Hannah Adler. After the game, Nicole Lukic used the term ruthless to describe the performance. What impressed you most about the attack specifically, though?
What impressed me about the attack was the way that the new players and the returning players were combining.
Yeah.
They were on the same page. It looked like they had been playing together for a while, even though they have not been training for a while. I would say that the returning players in the attack, Kat Rapp, Maya Hansen, Mariah Wynn, they looked like they had a season playing together. They looked like their chemistry was a little sharper. But you add in Adler and French, both with NWSL experience in there. Adler with Racing Louisville, Sophie French spent some time with the Portland Timbers. Sorry, Portland Thorns, excuse me. And it's just a really fun attack to watch. There is definitely awareness of where space is and how to take advantage of that. And there were obvious speed mismatches.
Yeah. Well, that NWSL experience helps, especially when you're bringing in newcomers with that can sort of, even though it's their first year versus other players' second year, it's almost those professionally seasoned players that can sort of help get the most out of some of those other talent, even though those other talent have been here for an extra year.
I think every goal had some combination, if you go back far enough, of where the buildup was or the initial pass of returning and new players. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't just, win, enhance, and give go up the pitch
Mhm.
just to each other, and everyone else is just letting them do their thing. There was a definite game plan, and it was to involve who was ever open, and the entire attack. And you could say all 10 players were up on the attack and
Mhm.
involved.
Yeah, that's something I noticed, and a little bit I was able to watch of the game live, and then watching some of the highlights back. It seemed like most every sequence that led up to a goal, you had almost every player on the pitch playing an influential role in that sequence, whether it was building up from the back, turning over in the midfield. It seemed like just the ball went through so many different areas, so many different players on the pitch. It seemed like everybody, as you mentioned, whether they're a newcomer, whether they're a second year player, no matter what the position was, so well organized, knowing exactly what to do in each situation and just playing a vital role front to back and what Minnesota is able to do, putting up goals.
I was impressed with the formation. Nicole Lukic last year really favored that 4-2-3-1,
Mhm.
possibly due to injuries, but I think maybe due to the opponent.
Yeah.
Chose a 4-1-4-1. There was not the double pivot in the midfield. Just Addie Wickers was the lone central mid, and
Mhm.
so she had both defensive and attacking responsibilities, and that's all they needed back there, and that meant that they
Yeah.
could have a fifth attacker up top.
And I was looking at Twitter this morning. It's not something I realized at the time, but I know Wes Burdine said that Lukic opted to invert her fullbacks, and that got them to play a little bit more centrally and play a little bit more of a role in the attack. So just adding to that depth and quality in the attack front to back when you even have your wing backs playing vital roles centrally, not just along the outside channels. That just brings there's so many different elements and so many different ways Aurora can take advantage of you on the pitch with their attack, and it seems like that was on full display last night.
Jeremy, that's a really good point by UN West, because those fullbacks coming in more centrally help def- defensively and offensively to fill those gaps that you would have a double pivot in the
Yep.
center. And so it was very, very effective. Also, as we're moving further back along the field, the newcomer central back pair of Kennedy Faulkner and Tiana Harris, both from the Toronto area, looked really solid.
Yep. Was that the biggest key to you in the defense? Obviously putting up a clean sheet. Rochester didn't really get much of a sniff on goal the entire game.
Yeah,
What played the biggest role in that from a defensive standpoint, in your opinion?
it's really a combination of full field defense. The high press was working
Mhm.
because of the speed advantage. And to take nothing away from the intelligence of the Aurora players, because it is not just speed, it is knowing when and where.
Mhm.
And it was organized, it was thoughtful, and they had a lot of turnovers in their attacking half of the pitch.
Mhm.
But when Rochester did have good attacking moments and chances, whether that's in the box or heading up the field, and just that combination of Addie Wickers at the central defense and the back four, they all knew their responsibilities
Mhm.
and were shutting things down. And that new center back pair really impressed me.
You look at this opener compared to last year's. I believe it was a 2-2 draw, if I'm not mistaken, last year in their home opener to
Against
kick off
Green
this
Bay.
against Green Bay to kick off the season. And you come out dominant with a 5-0 win. Over the course of Aurora's season last year, yes, they were undefeated pretty much throughout, but some of those games were pretty close. Some 2-1s, some 3-1s, some 3-2s in there as well. Not really, we didn't really see a dominant performance like this one really all last season during the regular season. Do you see kind of Aurora playing at a different level overall this year compared to last year? And who can? I said this on Twitter, but judging by last night's performance, I know it's a small sample size, but it's almost like who can hang with this team?
Right. The play-by-play announcer Jake Griffith said on the broadcast that last year Minnesota Aurora took some teams by surprise. They will take no teams by surprise this year
Mhm.
with their reputation. But along with what I expect other teams especially in the Heartland division, that have played Minnesota Aurora, trying to raise their level, whether that's through coaching, whether that's through players. They are all raising their levels, and Aurora says, we're going to raise our level too.
Yep.
We're going to build on what we did last year, and we're not going to settle for last year's level. We're going to bring in some depth. We're going to bring in new players. We're going to bring in a new energy, and we're going to show you something a little different.
Yeah, and well, they showed something different last night, a 5-0 dominant win, as we mentioned. Two-part question here, MJ, and obviously, as I mentioned, very small sample size, one game in. But which two-part question? First one, which second-year player seems to be taking the biggest step forward through one match, and which newcomer impressed you most Wednesday night?
Second-year player, really, that's so tough because they all played so well. I think the obvious one is Catherine Rapp, Cat Rapp,
Yep.
because not just the 2 goals, but her awareness of space. She was already pretty confident on the ball last year. She was the number 1 depth piece behind
Morgan Turner.
I'm sorry, I'm skipping on the name.
I know Morgan Turner was a super sub last year at the end of last season that Lukic opted to use through the playoffs and stuff to bring in a goal.
Right.
And they were pretty deep last year as well. In addition to the depth that they've built this year. So yeah.
Anyway, but at that central attacking midfield, Sangmin Cha was the maestro or the playmaker. And when Sangmin Cha would get tired, Cat Rapp would come in. And she would handle that pressure and the congestion of being in the center midfield and passing and finding space very, very well. Now, with 1 year of college play in D1, she's even more impressive, more confident, and has better awareness of the space around her. I look for her to start most games.
That's the underrated thing about this Aurora team, I think, in their second year is they had a lot of players last year, a number of players, I don't know a lot, but a number of players who played impact roles that were just coming out of high school, who really hadn't even got a chance to play even at the college level yet. And now a year of college experience, some of them at the Division I level, coming to the second year. I mean, how that plays such a vital role in the continued development and the impact they can make in their second year.
They also had a couple players that I will get into probably an in-depth roster piece mid-season that transferred from Division III schools to Division I schools or Division II schools to Division I schools. And so that Aurora experience and that Aurora coaching and just increased their scouting profile, but also increased their skill level so that they could go on and improve what league they play in, what college they play for. And so, Jelena Zabilich being the prime example of that, moving to D1 Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, it's that experience is so crucial, and it's kind of as you mentioned, it's kind of a vice versa thing as well, where that experience they get out of Aurora, the visibility and the platform they're given from that team as well, in addition to the skills that they're honing on the pitch with the coaching staff, it helps them in every aspect of
correction, wrong Big Ten school. She's at University of Minnesota. I apologize to all the fans.
There you go. So short turnaround here, MJ.
Yes.
Aurora travel to Chicago for a Saturday matchup with the Dutch Lions. Then I mean it's 2 matches per week, pretty much the entire way.
Yes.
It's Wednesday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, whatever it is.
The entire way. They're back on Wednesday, May 31st.
Yep.
And they're going to take on RKC Third Coast.
And this kind of directly aligns with someone we kind of just mentioned with the depth. I saw the Equal Time crew talking a lot about the depth of this squad being a huge plus. Do you see that as something that was really a focus in the roster building this offseason, is continuing to improve that depth? How much of an advantage do you think that will be, given it's so congested this entire season?
In a lot of my interviews that I did at trainings or at the Mall of America kit reveal, every player was talking about depth. And one of the things that came out is Nicole had a definite preferred 11 last year that, Rachel Preston had, I don't know how many minutes. Kelsey Kafusi had so many minutes.
A lot, yeah.
That it's going to be different this year. There's going to be more squad rotation because you can. We're not going to run players into the ground because we don't have to. We like the depth. I thought they were deep last year.
Mhm.
I thought they had composed a roster of differing skill levels, different experience levels, and had a good recipe of ingredients last year. It is so much stronger this year.
Yeah.
The ingredients that they added this year are potent. They come with international experience. Adler has played, yes, for Racing Louisville, but has also played in Denmark.
Mhm.
Vienna Benke, who saw time last night, she's played in Iceland.
Yep.
Both the center backs have a Canadian national team experience. One has played in Australia, and
Mhm.
you are adding that level of experience to this squad they all are buying in. They all love what Nicole Lukic and the coaching staff
100%.
that they all like the style of play. They've all commented on how it's intelligent. Everyone knows their role. It's easy to fit in. It's fun attacking soccer, and so all these things are coming together. It is only one data point. It is only one game into the season, but I am just excited with anticipation with where this team can go this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun at TCO Stadium in year 2 for Minnesota Aurora for sure. MJ, what's the latest in terms of injuries? I know you mentioned there were a few names on the report from both sides before we got on the air here.
Unfortunately for Rochester, their two most potent attackers, Brazilian Mera Alaveto, is from Northern Iowa, D1 school. She is out with injury, and Ana Ricarte Pacheco from Woodbury, Minnesota, and went to Shattuck St. Mary's. They were both out with injuries, and then probably their most experienced center back, Lindsey Birch, also local Rochester, went to Rochester Lords. She was a late scratch due to leg injury. So those three players, 2 attacking, 1 defensive for Rochester, unfortunately couldn't be on the pitch, and they may be out for this short season, a good chunk of the short season. So that changes Rochester's roster and their expectations for the rest of the season.
Yeah, before we get to Aurora, let's talk a little bit more about Rochester. Obviously, the second USLW league team in Minnesota, getting their first season this year. They had a really tough 1-0 loss to Bavarians to kick off the season at home, and then obviously this really rough 5-0 result for Aurora. Obviously a short sample size for you in seeing this Rochester team on the pitch, but what did you make of them, and what can we expect from them as we move forward, kind of in their inaugural season?
In that 1-0 loss to the Bavarians, Coco Alcade de Blas, their goalkeeper, had 12 saves. So she stopped 12 of 13 shots. That's really impressive. She is their captain for a reason. You do not see a lot of captain goalkeepers. And on the positive side, stepping in for Lindsey Birch, Madison Solis, who I got to interview post-game, and that interview will be in my recap. Maddie Solis, very vocal, good clearances, really smart center back defender stepping in. And then I also was able to talk with assistant coach for Rochester, just talking about how are we going to plug these holes in our kind of our leaky ship that we have with these injuries. And he said a lot of this game was used to figure out what are the right pieces to plug those holes.
Yep. Yeah, and that's going to be interesting. It's a lot of growing pains for Rochester, for the Loons, it seems, in their inaugural season. But so these players who may not have even gotten a starts or significant time are being kind of asked to come in less than ideal circumstances on the road against arguably the best team of the entire 60 plus in the USLW league, and not an easy ask by any stretch of the imagination, but valuable experience, I think, nonetheless, for all those players.
That's another thing that Coach Eric Feil talked about, was just getting his players experience, liking their energy, liking that they didn't give up despite the score. And I asked about the goalkeeper changes. He's like, well, just from what I just told you, 12 saves. Like, it's not like they thought that Coco Alcade de Blas was the problem. They saw the score and they said, this is a good chance to give one of our younger goalkeepers some minutes, some experience, and just kind of reset the game a bit. And so That goalkeeper that came in, Minnesota native Emma Knack, she plays with, I believe, Maya Hansen at South Dakota State. So they're college teammates.
Yep.
Emma Knack, also Minnesota native, and I believe St. Francis senior. So like she's going to go into her freshman year next year, you know. So you had someone like a Vienna Benke who's in her 30s attacking, you know, a teenager in goal. That is just a what do I want to say? You know, a small sample size that exhibits a larger pattern of difference of experience and difference of depth of these two squads.
I saw that I think it was either Emma's mom or one of Emma's family members taking a picture of her and Maya on the pitch after the
Yeah.
match. She said something
Super
like my two
cool.
kids or something like that. So that was pretty cool. And that shows it's just a very small world in the world of Minnesota soccer and just Northland soccer in general. A lot of these players from both sides have a lot of experience playing with and against each other, even outside of that summer season.
Yeah, so many of the players from both teams, since they're in Minnesota, like grew up playing, whether that was Minnesota Thunder Academy or other youth programs that would be household names to those that follow youth soccer here in Minnesota.
Anything notable injury wise on the Aurora front moving forward?
Yeah, so those wondering about the two new center backs may wonder where Kelsey Kafusi was. Kelsey Kafusi, they had a friendly against St. Thomas this past Saturday, and they took a couple injuries. One was Kelsey Kafusi, I believe, injured her leg or knee, and then goalkeeper Taylor Kane injured her thumb and needed an MRI on her thumb. And so the knock on the thumb, it was just basically precautionary. They were waiting on MRI results. So I expect Taylor Kane to be their number one goalkeeper going forward. But having Amanda Porbaugh and Olivia Grutman get some minutes in this game and showing what they can do, I was very impressed with Porbaugh's use of legs. She would come out of the box where she cannot use her hands, was very comfortable being that fifth defender and clearing the ball.
It's funny, even without Sarah Fuller this year, the Aurora goalkeeper room seems to be stacked once again. Same as it was last year. So that'll be interesting to see kind of how they rotate that, if there is any rotation with goalkeepers moving forward, considering the congestion.
Yeah, no, they have a very talented goalkeeper quartet, as they did last year. 3 of them are returning. I was wondering if they would try to replace Sarah Fuller with another Sarah Fuller type, and meaning tall, very athletic, dominant, celebrity status, what have you. And they are very, very happy with between Taylor Kane and Amanda Porbaugh to run with those two keepers. One of them will be one of them will be two. And it'll be interesting to see how much rotation there is.
All right, one final question here for you, MJ. Dominant win, but did you see any areas of improvement needed for Aurora moving forward? Any potential chinks in the armor that were, shown that maybe a higher tier team in the Heartland division or even in the playoffs that you might see them be able to take advantage of down the road?
This is so hard because it comes with a huge caveat, and that is that this team that they were playing, being in their second year and only their first year in the USLW League in Rochester FC, is so inexperienced, so young, and there was a huge speed mismatch on the pitch. And so because of that, you saw players trying to get away with things that they may not against a Green Bay Glory, against the Chicago Dutch Lions this Saturday. They may not try to do these things, but you saw them, whether that was playing a little bit more selfish, a little bit more hero ball, maybe trying to dribble through 3 or 4 players. You saw them try to do things that you don't want a more disciplined team doing. And just to echo this, Nicole Lukic said this at the end, that there was some turnovers and some places that we had a chance to keep possession or control the ball, and we went for something riskier. And she doesn't want to see that. She's a perfectionist. She wants to see control, discipline. She would have loved to see 8-0 or something like that. But obviously she had a lot of positive things to say. No complaints about the dominant 5-0 score. A lot of good things to say about her players. The other things that Nicole Lukic pointed out that I did not notice was how the players were playing with the wind. And that struck me as a very intelligent take. she said that too many balls in the air when they could have been played on the pitch. And that's something that a more seasoned player like Nicole Lukic and a more seasoned coach can point out to her players, and you'll see that probably improve over time. But yeah, first game out of the gate, everyone's hyped, going for a few long balls here and there, like that's to be expected.
Yeah, you just don't want your team, as Lukic was alluding to there, you don't want your team to fall into bad habits where they're making those mistakes against competition that could really, really make you pay for those, even just minor miscues. All right. Matthew Johnson, sotasoccer.com, Minnesota Aurora beat reporter. You can follow him on Twitter at MJ Matsui. Follow his coverage all season long of Aurora. MJ, we appreciate the time, man. And I'm sure this is not the first or second conversation will be happening over the course of the season. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate all that you do for Sota Soccer and for Midwest soccer.
Appreciate it. Thanks, MJ.